ABC7 News presents Reefs to Rainforests, the Great Expedition.
Think about this. 90% of all life on Earth has yet to be discovered, and many species may become extinct before we even know they exist. Hello, I'm Dan Ashley at the California Academy of Sciences in Golden Gate Park. You may think of it as a museum, but this remarkable place is so much more. Beyond the exhibits, this is a high-level research center. Academy scientists travel the globe. In fact, they're just back from their biggest expedition ever to one of the world's richest ecosystems. They believe they found as many as 500 new species on this trip and learned a lot more about our wonderful and sometimes strange planet. Come along with us now to the Philippine Islands. Reefs to Rainforests, the Great Expedition.
Going in.
Dive after dive, hike after hike. Academy scientists and their Filipino colleagues joined forces for more than a month. The mission: to find and to document life of all sizes and shapes on Luzon, the largest of the Philippines' 7,000 islands.
There isn't a dive that I've made here where I haven't seen something unexpected and something new.
The money for the project was a gift from Margaret and Will Hurst. Scientists now estimate there are close to 9 million species on Earth, but they've only found about 10% of them. A lot of the unknown treasures are believed to be in places like the Philippines.
It's got riches in the tropical forests and high mountains all the way down to the coral reefs, which are the richest in the world.
Many discoveries were underwater. Colorful sea slugs, a new type of deep water shark.
To find a new species is very exciting. To find a new species of shark, that's a rare event.
Researchers camped in the jungle in pouring rain, hiked to the top of ancient volcanoes, and trawled the ocean a mile and a half deep.
We were interested in finding things that were beyond what a diver could dive to.
Some members of the team are longtime professionals, top in their field. Some are giddy grad students, full of the excitement of the chase.
You don't want to get bit by that thing. Oh.
It's fun, but still serious science, critical to learning how the world works and how to preserve it. Filipino scientists welcome the collaboration.
Because there's very little appreciation of biodiversity of what we have here. And for a large group of scientists to come over, the locals start realizing what they have.
As you can see, we have a lot to show you over the next hour. A new species could lead to a cure to cancer, a way to feed a hungry nation, or a critical clue to understanding evolution. But first you have to find it, and the Philippines is a prime place to look. The expedition includes almost 100 people, scientists and support staff fanning out to a wide range of locations on land and sea. The first leg of the expedition is like arriving in paradise, except for the long, steep stairs you have to take to get there. This is Club Aceleras, a thatched roof hideaway built for scuba diving tourists. For the next month, marine biologists are taking over. They've turned the public spaces into laboratories, and every morning dive boats line up to take the scientists in search of new species.
This is a huge deal. The expedition is the largest expedition in the Academy's history, and that's 158 years of exploration.
Terry Gosliner is expedition leader and Academy Dean of Science. Terry's already discovered more than 1,000 new species in his career. It was his idea to bring a big group of specialists in all kinds of organisms here to one of the world's richest ecosystems. Sadly, it is also one of the most threatened.
So there's urgency to get information about what's there, how it's distributed, and how we can more effectively save what's left.
Over there's huge rock that goes down to about 60 feet.
The team uses experienced guides who know the best spots. They get around in boats called bancas. Filipino and American scientists work together, and there are amazing discoveries almost immediately.
I've never seen any species that looks quite like that before.
Coral expert Gary Williams found a likely new species of sea pen, an animal related to coral and sea anemones.
And there's rods of spicules, calcium carbonate spicules that give it support, and it's like spokes of a wheel.
The expedition team is near the top of what's known as the Coral Triangle, extending from the Philippines to Indonesia to Papua New Guinea.
This area has been shown to have more corals, more fishes, more invertebrate life than any place on the planet. So one of the questions we have been asking is, where is the center of that diversity within the triangle?
That's a critical question too, because the answer will determine what areas need the most protection. The latest research shows that center of diversity may be the Verde Island Passage in the Philippines. So that's where the expedition is focusing. This could be the very place where many species first came into being.
The raw material for evolution is here in a very concentrated area.
Terry's research supports that idea. He studies sea slugs called nudibranchs that come in an almost unbelievable variety of colors and patterns. Terry has found 812 different species in the Verde Island Passage, 81 on this expedition alone. Someday, they may even save lives.
Several nudibranch species are being tested for anti-cancer and anti-HIV drugs.
Chrissy Petrowski is looking for polychaete worms, another creature with spectacular variety. After every dive, she dissects tiny tubes where they could be hiding.
Usually I get nothing, and that's what I've got right here.
When she does find them, they are worth looking at.
Tropical worms in particular can be really beautiful, extreme color variation. Some of them have beautiful brachial plumes, which are filter feeding apparatuses that they extend out into the water for food.
Despite the obvious beauty here, researchers do not expect to find many new fish. The Verde Island Passage, you see, has been overfished for years. And to make matters worse, sometimes fishermen use dynamite, even cyanide, and it destroys entire reefs. Another threat comes from climate change, causing a phenomenon known as coral bleaching. Corals are animals. They need algae living inside them to survive.
When the temperatures go up just by 2 degrees, that's enough for the algae to get stressed and leave the coral.
The corals begin to starve and can be dead within a matter of weeks. There was a bleaching episode here last year. Scientists are eager to see what's happened since.
The recovery rate was extremely rapid, and this gives us great hope that this is a reservoir that can repopulate other areas that are more heavily decimated.
One fish they do hope to find is an elusive kind of snake eel. They have a photo, but it's never been caught and verified as a new species. On this day, Bob Van Syke actually had it in his hands, but the eel escaped.
Sometimes we win, sometimes the eels win.
They're not giving up on that eel, and there are still lots of other creatures to find after all. Perry Palaracio is a top dive guide with some innovative methods. To collect tiny floating creatures, he likes the plastic bottle technique.
And then you squeeze it and suck it.
Today, he caught a very tiny sea slug that way. They have to get it in a baggie before something bad happens.
No drinking new species. Not today.
Sometimes the diving gets interrupted by storms and typhoon warnings, but mostly they keep searching and finding discovery after discovery.
That's one of the most beautiful pipefish I've ever seen in my life.
Pipefish are relatives of seahorses. Healy Hamilton is an expert.
All of them just have tube snouts through which they suck in a very rapid and strong motion.
This one is getting the tip of its tail clipped for DNA analysis.
It's going to grow back and he's going to be fine.
Healy also made some spectacular finds on giant sea fans. Hiding in the branches are pygmy seahorses, less than an inch long, perfectly camouflaged to match their host. The area is filled with sea urchins with lots of spines and colors created by reflecting light. You might not think they can move on their own, but this time-lapse video shows you that these guys do get around. The divers get around pretty well too, and they finally got the eel that they were looking for. Perry is the hero who followed it into a rocky area.
And I just grabbed it with all those rocks and stuff like that, and I didn't let go. I think those rocks helped a lot.
Slippery little guy and strong. While one Academy team was exploring the oceans, another was exploring the tropical rainforests in the Philippines. We're actually in a rainforest right now, only this one is underneath a glass dome here at the Academy of Sciences in Golden Gate Park. The expertise to put all of this together came from botanists. Now, you might not think that's a job for a superhero, but when ABC7 traveled with botanists, we found out that if you want to study plants, you better be tough. A lot of days in the Philippines start with jeepney rides. Jeepneys are open-air buses, the main form of public transportation here. They're known for wild paint jobs and hood ornaments, and they are perfect for carting around scientists. But this is the cushy stuff. For what's ahead, you better be rugged.
It helps.
Darren Pennies is one of the Bay Area botanists joining Filipino colleagues to research and rescue the country's rainforests. Peter Fritsch is the group leader.
It's one of the hot spots of tropical biodiversity, which means that it's extremely diverse in terms of species, and it also is under extreme threat.
The Philippines' population is growing, the pristine natural areas shrinking. Here on the slopes of Mount Isarog, the environmental problem is obvious. The top of the mountain is a national park with lush rainforest. But at lower elevations, the forest is disappearing, replaced by homes and rice paddies. The farmers have a lot of children and keep moving up the mountain, cutting down more forest to support their families. This is the only way of life they know. The park superintendent says it's almost impossible to police the park boundaries.
I don't have that much people to take part in the protection, so I rely more on the community.
Many of the guides and porters hired by the expedition are locals. They volunteer as forest guardians. In return, park officials try to get them work in what they hope will be a growing environmental tourism industry. But only about 5% of Philippine rainforest is still undisturbed.
Looking for anything in flower or anything in fruit.
Botanists spent 5 days on Mount Isarog, one of 3 mountains they explored.
It just keeps going up and up and up.
The mountain is covered with dense tropical forests.
It's got spines. I'm not going to mess with it.
This time of year, the high temperature averages 90 degrees with 85% humidity, so it can feel like more than 110 degrees. And there are a lot of leeches. This park official got one between her toes. Even so, Jim Shivak, a 61-year-old retiree, does this for fun.
You want to try to get one of everything that's up here.
That's everything from tiny mosses to much showier plants. During the trip, they collected 1,200 specimens, each with its own unique spot in the ecosystem. Philippine scientist Benito Tan says even the mosses are critical.
They absorb water during heavy rain, and they release the water during dry days.
That's vital to people below because the forest acts as a filter, cleaning their drinking water. The forest also holds in soil and stops it from running down the mountain and into the ocean.
The fabulous coral reefs surrounding the Philippine Islands would just be silted and eventually they would die.
The team includes an expert tree climber. He works barefoot, climbing 50 or 60 feet in just a few minutes, then neatly dropping the specimens.
There's one. There we go.
It's a long, slow process, and lunch is part of the adventure.
That's milkfish.
It's wrapped in banana leaves, a sustainable alternative to plastic bags. The work goes on for hours. This large fern is almost definitely new to science.
It's exciting.
Some nights they camp, some they go to a hotel room to organize what they've collected for shipping home.
We could be working on specimens well past midnight.
Next morning, they're back at it, looking for a mysterious plant called Rafflesia.
It's this plant that has no leaves, it has no above-ground stems.
But it does have a giant flower, visible only a few days a year, with a smell like rotting meat. Some of the botanists saw this one earlier on the trip on another mountain. Now, this group is looking for a related species said to be blooming on Mount Isarog.
I've waited 25 years to see a Rafflesia in the wild.
The hike is intense. A couple of hours through rice paddies, up a river lined with slippery boulders, then a climb, 40, maybe 50 feet up a bank, clinging to vines. At the top, in a dense tangle of brush, on the edge of a steep drop-off,
Ivy, be careful.
Botany professor Ivy Ambor-Lambio is the first to spot the Rafflesia.
Oh yeah, look.
It turns out there are a few of them here.
They're velvety black.
Ivy even agrees to climb through the vines and give one a smell.
Yeah, they smell bad. At this angle. I'm sorry. Did my face just show how yuck. And there are maggots in it.
The flowers are a few days past their prime, but if you're a botanist, hey, this is what it is all about.
I was on all fours. I'm dirty, I'm sweaty, and there are bugs around. Yeah, it's not a nice experience, but finding this plant is really worth it.
Frank Almeida believes there's no better career.
The only regret I have in doing this line of work is that one lifetime isn't enough. That's the only regret. It's true.
All this exploration is going on in a country where many people are just beginning to learn about the environment. Mary Lou Salcedo is the expedition project manager, helping scientists reach out to the Filipino people.
Quite a few want to make the change, but it takes a lot of education.
And that's where this guy comes in. Meet Tuffy, a seahorse who's about to become an ambassador for the ocean. It's an important job, but first he has to spend the night in a bucket.
He's a pregnant male. That is right, pregnant male.
In seahorses, males actually give birth. The female deposits the eggs in the belly of the male.
And you can see his pouch is filled with little baby seahorses.
We may call them seahorses, but they're actually fish. They secure themselves by wrapping their tails around things, in this case, an oxygen tube. In the morning, Tuffy's real adventure starts. First, a bouncy car ride, then a steep staircase. Finally, Tuffy is a celebrity guest at this meeting of local community leaders and teachers. This is a key part of the expedition. Academy and Filipino scientists sharing what they're learning, becoming partners in conservation.
The United States is blessed with having a lot of technical expertise, but the Philippines is blessed with natural resources.
They make presentations at small community centers and major universities, always with workshops for teachers on how to make science more interesting. At this meeting, the local mayor is delighted by news that his town may be in the middle of the world's richest coral reefs.
It would showcase my town, Mabini, Batangas, as one of the best diving destinations in the country, if not the entire world.
He pledges to do what he can for conservation. The next day, Tuffy's work is done, and he's released. 70 feet deep, just where he belongs.
I hope so much that he's able to give birth to his belly full of babies and live a happy life.
We have so much more to share with you. Later, what scientists brought back from the Philippines that you can see for yourself right here at the Academy. But when we come back, a new species of shark.
It's a beautiful specimen. Absolutely gorgeous.
Reefs to rainforests. The great expedition continues.
You're watching the ABC7 News special, Reefs to Rainforests, The Great Expedition.
Welcome back to the California Academy of Sciences and our journey to one of the most spectacular places on the planet. Academy scientists on an expedition to a nation with exotic charm, but serious growing pains. The Philippines is a nation of islands, more than 7,000 of them, most formed by volcanoes. The country is right at the intersection of huge cracks in the Earth's crust, the result of constantly shifting tectonic plates. That unique geography may help explain why the Philippines has such rich ecosystems, but they are under tremendous pressure. The Philippines has nearly 100 million people on islands that together are about the size of Arizona, and the population is growing fast. This is a heavily Catholic country, now in the middle of a fierce political battle over sex education and birth control.
The children here get to know about sex education via peers, not mostly from parents or teachers.
The Philippines has had an up and down relationship with the United States, but in some areas you'd almost think you were in the U.S. Skyscrapers, traffic jams, lots of American products, and most schools teach in English.
It's all because of the strong American influence, that stay after the Second World War.
Parts of Manila are growing so fast, construction goes on 24 hours a day. But when you move beyond the capital, the pace is decidedly slower, and American influence comes with a twist, like McDonald's in a mobile van with a coconut stand in front.
In general, people here, the culture is very hospitable to all foreigners.
Families tend to be close-knit, the streets full of friendly children, happy to show our ABC7 News crew through complicated back alleys. The average income in the Philippines is only about $2,000 a year, with an economy heavily dependent on the ocean. The environmental movement is in its infancy, with very little infrastructure for things like recycling.
Even if I want to recycle, I don't know where to either bring the tin can. There is no garbage can. There is no dumping site for that.
So much beauty, so much trash. The tourist areas are trying to keep the beaches clean, but like most of the world, there is a long way to go. And trash is just the beginning.
Here in Metro Manila, it's only 7% seweraged. So most of Metro Manila's waste really goes into Manila Bay.
Some of the locals still fish in Manila Bay, but it's so polluted, Academy scientists are focusing their research on other areas, still full of spectacular biodiversity. But even in the most pristine reefs, something is missing.
Only saw 2 sharks during 1,000 dives.
John McCusker is one of the world's top shark experts, and he's worried. John says when he was in the Philippines 30 years ago, things were very different.
Every time I'd be in the water, I'd be surrounded by sharks. There were sharks everywhere. I was kind of nervous at first, but I got over it when I realized that those sharks weren't dangerous sharks.
John says the disappearance of sharks and other big fish is what's really dangerous, especially if they're killed before they have a chance to reproduce.
The removal of top-level predators, like the sharks that are so critical to reef ecology, causes a downward collapsing cascade, a spiral where you have ecosystem collapse.
One way researchers figure out which fish are left in the ocean is to see what's for sale in fish markets. This one is in Manila.
Do they sell sharks in the market? Do you sell sharks? No sharks?
No sharks.
We didn't see any sharks in the fish market, not because they don't want to sell them, but the sharks are all gone.
They did see this spotted stingray in the market. It was selling for about $1 a pound.
A dive resort operator once told me that those fish might be worth $1,000 a pound.
But that's if they are alive, so scuba diving tourists can see them. The Academy team also spent a week on a research boat in the deep sea off the Philippines.
We haven't seen a single shark at the surface.
But far from the surface, they did find more than a dozen small sharks, 1,500 to 3,000 feet deep.
And this shark living as deep as it does isn't being caught and killed yet.
They're believed to be a new species of swell shark with the ability to change body shape, sometimes sleek and streamlined, sometimes roly-poly, like this one.
But that's nothing. When they're in their habitat and they're frightened by a larger predator, they'll swallow enough water to look like a bowling ball with fins on it.
These newfound sharks were treated like celebrities by the scientists, excited by discovery, but worried about the worldwide decline.
About a decade ago, sharks started to disappear, and disappear by as many as 73 million a year, primarily to have their fins cut off to be sold to the Asian community for shark fin soup.
Several of the new sharks are being brought back to San Francisco for research, but most were returned gently to the water to spawn a new generation. Researchers hope other sharks will get the same chance.
Life in the ocean depends on it.
You can still see Philippine sharks here at the California Academy of Sciences. By the way, these guys were all bred in captivity, so don't worry about any ecological impact. But Academy scientists did get special permission to bring some creatures back to the Bay Area. Up next, who made the trip and why they are as important as they are fascinating.
Certainly we're the first public aquarium ever to display that species in the United States.
ABC7 News presents Reefs to Rainforests, the Great Expedition.
Welcome back to the California Academy of Sciences. I'm Dan Ashley. I'm standing by a 212,000-gallon recreation of a Philippine coral reef. Spectacular, isn't it? And it's still a work in progress. And that work took Academy scientists to the Philippines recently, looking for new species and new exhibits. The Academy expedition is bringing together scientists who specialize in all kinds of different creatures. Most of the experts are here to do research, but 3 are from the Academy's Steinhardt Aquarium.
We're here to observe the ecosystems that we're trying to replicate in the Academy.
They take underwater video to document the wide variety of life in the coral reefs here. They are also armed with buckets and baggies to bring home a few treasures.
And I'll also carry this bag too, which will float up behind me.
The team goes through an elaborate permit process to make sure there is no damage to the reefs.
We just collected an aspenosoma, which is a fire urchin.
Pretty and poisonous. And now you can see it too, safely behind glass in the Bay Area.
We were able to bring back a lot of animals that really aren't available through any other means.
Animals like these, known as sexy shrimp because of the way they seem to dance around, and ghost pipefish, relatives of the seahorse, camouflaged to look like pieces of coral or blades of seagrass. One creature the staff really wants to display is a coconut octopus, and on this trip the dive team hits the jackpot. The coconut octopus is known for the interesting way it moves and its habit of using whatever it can find as a temporary home. This one chose a glass jar, and this one is headed for San Francisco.
Very cool. It'll be going right on display as soon as we get home.
And sure enough, here he is now, giving visitors the eye at the aquarium. This is believed to be the first time this species has been displayed anywhere in the United States. The octopus has already grown a lot bigger.
When you go and collect them yourself, you're able to care for that animal from the moment that you put your hands on it and make sure that it's receiving the best care, suitable care, every bit of the way.
While they were in the Philippines, biologists Rich Ross and Matt Wandel set up a holding area for the collection about 50 yards offshore. It's sort of like a clothesline with containers full of creatures hanging in the water. They even rigged it with recycled trash.
We were thinking a little while for what kind of float we could use, and then we realized there's bottles all over the place.
A lot of the work is focused on coral. The reefs are protected by law, and the Academy is one of the only institutions allowed to take coral from the Philippines. They try to find little fragments that broke off naturally, or they take finger-sized clippings that won't damage the animal. Back at the Steinhardt Aquarium, the coral is put in a carefully controlled growing area.
Some of the larger colonies that are over here are from prior trips to the Philippines, and you can see by comparison how a small fragment that we take, a size like this, can grow into a colony that's that big around in a period of a year or two.
The Academy will use the coral in its own exhibits and trade it to other aquariums. They hope their exhibit will remind visitors the reefs need protection. Coral reefs are clearly critical to a healthy ecosystem, but so is what is happening farther away from the shore. Our next stop with Academy scientists in the Philippines, the deep sea. This morning on the research boat starts with a storybook sunrise. Scientists hoping their fairy godmother will make the wireless internet work. And instead of a handsome prince, armed guards to protect against pirates. Always a possibility. This is life in the deep sea on a boat operated by the Philippines Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources. A hot meal sizzling in the kitchen, scientists tucked into dorm rooms.
My bunk is here. I didn't make my bed.
Life is good now, but the trip got off to a rocky start when the crew made it very clear to the Americans this is not a luxury liner.
The first mate who promptly told us that we couldn't have towels and toilet paper because it wasn't a hotel. But no, he was also very useful in helping us plot the route.
Rich Moy is an expert on sea urchins and starfish. He's the man in charge of this part of the expedition.
We know almost nothing about the deep ocean.
For 8 days, master Filipino fishermen help researchers troll the deep waters of the Verde Island Passage. They are traveling around the island of Lubong, 70 miles from Manila. They set traps and lower nets, some almost 1.5 miles deep.
There's nothing more exciting to a scientist like me than that tingly moment when the net is coming over the back of the deck.
When the trawl is good, it's like Christmas, only a little more dangerous.
No, I don't want you to touch it because it's got toxic it's got venomous spines, okay?
Every scientist is looking for their specialty and hoping for surprises.
I've never seen a brittle star like that before. That's pretty amazing.
The haul is brought over to a sorting table on the deck.
And that's when the fun starts.
The scientists pore over everything that comes up, a crazy quilt of creatures, testimony to the extreme biodiversity in the ocean here. Large lumbering sea cucumbers, sea snails that seem built for beauty, others built for self-defense.
What's really unusual about them is they have this sort of furry covering on the shell.
But senior scientist John McCosker is really excited by the fish, which he calls the most creative animals.
There are more kinds of living fishes than all of the rest of the living vertebrates combined.
Meet the hatchet fish.
Most of life in the deep sea is always looking up, waiting for something to swim above it.
Hatchet fish are prepared.
On their underside, they have a row of little light-producing photophores, light organs.
This scorpion fish has poisonous spines and color that creates camouflage.
Underwater, this fish is not red because red light is absorbed in shallow surface water, and at depth, this fish is gray.
The specimens are carefully handed down the hatch, whisked off to a maze of laboratories below deck. Around every corner, a scientist has something new. This thin orange worm was found inside another worm, a big fat one with spikes. Gary Williams is a coral expert, getting a rare chance to see deep water coral alive.
Like this, I've never seen this alive.
It's called black coral, but it's the skeleton inside that is actually black. A lot of these huge crustaceans came up in the traps. They're related to the roly-poly pill bugs that you find in your garden, only bigger and with swim fins.
And they use them just like scuba divers or skin divers use their fins. They're able to propel themselves through the water like little submarines.
This is an eel called a synaphobranchid eel.
It got caught when it went into a trap to eat a shrimp.
As you can feel in its stomach. Don't do that.
It's too early to know yet if this eel is a significant find, but John is pretty sure this one is a real treasure.
A new species of snake eel.
This weird thing is believed to be a new species of barnacle, and 1 out of every 5 starfish they found appears to be new to science. This tiny little thing is a new wood star. Magnified, you can see it's a kind of starfish.
All the hands, please stand by.
The trawling and the trapping goes on almost non-stop. Sometimes it's muddy, or raining, or dark. Sometimes the traps come up empty.
We've been skunked.
And then there's the trash. Lots and lots of it that comes up with every trawl. Most is plastic.
And that stuff doesn't degrade. So even in the deepest deep sea out here, there is trash. On the bottom, it is now competing with the animals.
Another sign of human impact? Notice the large bump on this batfish. It's a growth, likely caused by sewage dumped in the ocean. But there is a lot of good news from this voyage, including the discovery of that new species of shark we talked about earlier, and the bond formed between American and Filipino scientists, all committed to a better future.
I'm sure that this collaboration will go on and on for many, many years to come.
Luby,
Yes,
this is for you because I love you.
thank you so much. I love you too.
As you can see, they love their work. And how could they not? When we come back, what scientists are doing to make sure the fish you eat is safe.
This is something that's important for food security, both in the United States and in the Philippines.
And the trip to the Philippines was not just about fish. In a moment, the Bug Patrol.
They're called giant crab spiders. This is the biggest one I've ever seen.
You're watching the ABC7 News special, Reefs to Rainforests, the Great Expedition.
Welcome back. We've been traveling with the Academy of Sciences on a search for new species in the Philippines. They found hundreds. But this trip is also giving scientists the chance to protect consumers, you and me. Watch now a different kind of fishing trip. Kent Carpenter and Jeff Williams are shopping for fish. They're not looking for a good price or even the best tasting fish. What they want is variety.
The Filipinos eat every species of fish, even small ones.
This market is in Batangas City in the central Philippines. This is where the locals shop.
It's a lot of fish, a lot of odor, and, and a lot of slime as well.
Kent is a fellow with the California Academy of Sciences. Jeff is with the Smithsonian in Washington, D.C. These guys know their fish.
This is a species that I named, so Pterocesio tessellata.
But even for experts, sometimes it's tough to tell one kind of fish from another, especially if it's cut up. 70% of the fish sold in the United States is imported. Most of it is labeled correctly, but the Food and Drug Administration has found many cases where it is not. So the FDA is helping to create a DNA database for fish to identify what's what.
This is something that's important for food security, both in the United States and in the Philippines.
Unscrupulous exporters sometimes substitute cheap fish for expensive ones. Even worse, poisonous species like this pufferfish are sometimes mislabeled, and people who eat it get very sick.
And that did happen within the last few years. A large quantity of pufferfish specimens were sold as monkfish in the U.S.
Kent and Jeff spent 3 weeks here searching for fish.
The fish markets in the Philippines have some of the highest diversity in the world.
This was a good day.
We collected from 80 to 100 species.
They take the fish to a makeshift lab to process while it's still fresh.
Very long day. We've been doing 16, 18-hour days.
Each fish is suspended in a tank and photographed before its original color fades. The fish is preserved, and scientists take a tissue sample. Those samples are sent to a lab like this one at the Academy of Sciences. It takes a couple of days to treat them, run them through a genetic analyzer, and get a DNA sequence. Then researchers look at one specific gene believed to be unique to every species.
You just scroll along and see the sequence of nucleotides.
This lettered code is what separates the perch from the snapper. The FDA hopes to use it in the future to spot check fish coming into the country. On this trip, the team collected almost 400 species of fish that will become part of an international database. Even with all of those new fish samples, the database has a long way to go. There are an estimated 30,000 different species of fish from all over the world, so collecting DNA from all of them will take some time. Time and enormous effort is also what it takes to find insects and spiders, and in the Philippines, there are plenty of both. Charles Griswold is a real-life Spider-Man, an expert on arachnid behavior, evolution, and webs. One of the critical tools of his trade is cornstarch.
So we use this to find the spiders, we use this to study the architecture and the behavior that they use to make their webs.
This web was made by a female gastrocantha.
So it's a very pretty spider.
But many of the beauties in the forest are harder to find. So Charles has a team of bug detectives, Bay Area students working alongside Filipino scientists and students. Sometimes they beat the bushes with a stick.
Oh, look at that.
It's beautiful.
Sometimes they use bags fitted with screens. They fill the bag with leaves and shake it to sift out the bugs. Hannah Wood is a grad student at UC Berkeley. She's using a gadget called a pooter to catch tiny creatures on the ground. Hannah sucks the bugs into a tube, then blows them into a bottle. There is a little screen in the tube to make sure nothing gets in her mouth, but they can still crawl on her.
I think scorpions are probably the only ones that can really hurt you.
She caught this one before it did any harm. A little creepy for some, but San Francisco State student Vanessa Knutson thinks it's exciting.
It's kind of cool to not be an expert on things because then you have that wonder still and what is this, and you can ask.
It's got huge eyes.
Once the specimens are in the lab, the microscope makes it easier to see what's so cool about them. Researchers are looking for new species and to learn more about species they've already discovered. Who lives where and why? What do they eat? And why are there more than 100 species of so-called Easter egg weevils?
Which have extraordinary, almost inexplicable markings. They're polka dotted, they have iridescent crosses and zigzags. They're just beautiful, beautiful animals.
On this trek, the team is in a rainforest in the hills above the University of the Philippines at Los Banos.
One of those huge centipedes.
Oh!
But it's gone. No, it went away. Oh. Shoot.
They have to be careful because centipedes have a very painful bite.
Get in the vial, you stupid. Yay!
Oh my gosh.
Oh.
It can't come in.
Please
Can
be
you?
careful. Can you pull that leaf off?
Yeah, that's good.
Sweet success.
Nice.
Whoa.
A lot of the best hunting happens at night.
Many invertebrates and also vertebrates are much more active at night. So if you go around, when you have a good light, you can see a lot of stuff.
As it gets darker, the noise from cicadas makes it harder to hear anything else. This is what's making all that racket. The cicada has an organ on its side called a tympanum that vibrates very fast to create the sound. Many bugs are easy to catch in the dark. They fly right to a big sheet with a light on it. This spider is known for the extreme size difference between the female, she's the big yellow one, and the male, he's the little red guy. For creatures that are a little sneakier, you need a local forest expert like Mark Inhente.
Oh my gosh!
Nice catch, dude.
This fellow may be handsome, but his real value tonight is that he led the team to a giant spider right nearby.
This is family Sparacidae. They're called giant crab spiders. This is the biggest one I've ever seen.
Charles managed to get him into a baggie, but the spider bit his hand through the plastic. No one's sure if the bite is dangerous.
I don't know. Probably not, but we'll see.
Even after that bite, the team kept collecting. This insect is camouflaged to look like a stick.
There are 6 legs, and this is the abdomen, this is the head.
And this millipede, well, it caused a lot of excitement.
It's probably a new species.
It could take months, even years, to know that for sure. But it only took a couple of hours to be certain that Charles's spider bite was painful, yes, but not serious. So the team could get back to the business at hand, understanding the species that depend on this fragile rainforest. One challenge on any expedition is getting permits for everything from permission to hike and camp to taking specimens out of the country. Those specimens on this trip included frogs and snakes. Now, Academy scientists studying reptiles and amphibians were thrilled to get permission to go into a pristine forest that's usually off limits. They took video of what they found. Metropolitan Manila is home to more than 11 million people. But just 2 hours away is a lake and a forest almost untouched by humans. This area is the primary source of drinking water for Manila. Almost no one is allowed to visit.
You get a sense of what it might have been like 100, 150 years ago.
Academy Research Associate Rafe Brown and his team are among the lucky few to get a look. It took 2 days to get here by foot and by boat. Conditions are primitive, and it's the beginning of the rainy season. They're searching for reptiles and amphibians, sharing a campsite with scientists looking for other creatures.
Trying to get a realistic estimate of the biodiversity, try to understand how it's arranged and how it's maintained and how it's packaged.
If that sounds like a business plan, it is. Nature's business. They are studying how supply and demand for food and shelter pushes animals from one area to another, then sometimes leads to the evolution of a new species. That happened years ago to the flying frog, with extensive webbing in its toes.
They jump out of trees and can spread their arms and legs and glide between trees.
And to the mangrove snake.
This one we actually caught in a river last night, where they're out hunting birds and frogs.
Researchers are always looking for new species, but they have another mission too.
This is Rhabdophis barbari, one of the lost species of amphibians and reptiles in the Philippines.
Lost species are animals found almost 100 years ago, but only rarely or never seen since. They're carefully stored in the Academy collection, and scientists are always hoping to see one alive. During a trek to northern Luzon, they found this one.
A really rare specimen of a snake called Hologarum philippinicum. The video footage is the first video footage of that species ever.
They also found 4 species of frogs that were considered lost.
And when we find something like that, it's very satisfying because the biodiversity in that area is still complete.
Another big find, this huge monitor lizard. It was actually caught by local hunters. The scientists rescued and released it. It's a rare species that lives in trees and usually stays away from people. Another amazing find in the rainforest. And there's more to come. Next, scientists document Philippine ecosystems in trouble, but they also find reason for hope.
One of the things that's so surprising is how resilient life is on the planet.
You're watching the ABC7 News special, Reefs to Rainforests, The Great Expedition.
Welcome back. After 6 weeks of exploration and discovery in the Philippines, Academy scientists are now back home. But their work is not finished. It will take years of DNA testing and research to confirm exactly how many new species they found. Based on preliminary work, that number could go as high as 500, far more than they were expecting to find, so it's a huge success. The great expedition netted new species and new awareness about one of the world's most precious habitats. The final leg of the trip ended with marine biologists sailing into Manila Harbor. The specimens they collected will be divided between the Academy and partner organizations in the Philippines. Many were carefully shipped to the Bay Area, like that eel that gave divers so much trouble, now confirmed as a species new to science.
It's a wonderfully beautiful creature now. How can you not agree with how beautiful this fish is?
The eel came from the Verde Island Passage in the central Philippines, the focus of the entire expedition. The research solidifies its importance.
There's very little debate in my mind that this really is the richest place for marine life on the entire planet Earth.
But the world's coral reefs are in serious trouble, victims of climate change, pollution, and destructive fishing methods. Only 1% of the reefs in the Verde Island Passage are protected by law.
The marine protected areas were the only places where we saw schools of large fish. And as soon as you got out of those protected areas, you only saw small fish and much lower diversity.
Those protected areas are tiny, but research indicates if they're made larger, the fish population will rebound. And there's a similar finding in the Philippines' rainforests. Less than 5% are still intact. The good news, replanting can work.
What we know now is that a lot of those forests that were once completely cut down but were next to an original patch of forest and then grew back so that the animals could move back into this forest as it matured are doing great.
But it's still vital to preserve what's left. We found Filipino scientists and ordinary citizens risking their lives to do just that. In fact, while the expedition was in the Philippines, a ranger who reported illegal settlements in the rainforest was killed. But that's not stopping environmental volunteers, people like Jesse de los Reyes. Jesse runs a water taxi. His parents were among those who removed coral and damaged reefs.
Now, maybe I am the person who tell my parents and my colleagues in Calatagan stop doing any bad in the sea.
Jesse is part of Reef Check, a volunteer organization started in California training citizens to monitor coral reefs. Many towns in the Verde Island Passage still depend on fishing, but some are now moving toward ecotourism. Boats built for fishing take out tourists instead. That means keeping coral reefs healthy brings in money. But Academy scientists were still concerned to see dive boats use anchors that scrape across the delicate coral. During a presentation to local politicians, they made the case for mooring buoys that do less damage.
It's very inexpensive. It's safer for everyone.
The local mayor agreed to take action, and some Filipinos are also starting to tackle trash. A few communities are now recycling, and others are banning plastic bags. So far, most of the environmental action is local, but the national government is beginning to pay attention.
I'm getting hopeful because the president just declared this decade a decade of biodiversity.
So there is progress, but Academy scientists and environmentalists say there is no time to waste. Half of the Earth's rainforests have been destroyed. Many of the ocean's big fish are simply gone. And 70% of the coral reefs could disappear in the next 15 years. 70%.
Awareness is not enough anymore. It's not just being aware. We have to move. We have to act.
So now we know. Time is of the essence if we intend to protect what is certainly among the most important and diverse ecosystems anywhere on Earth, which is why the Academy of Sciences launched the largest expedition in its history. And we were so glad to have taken you along. For all of us at ABC7, I'm Dan Ashley. Thank you for watching. Bye for now.